All right, what's up, everyone? Bryce Gelman here today to recap Giants versus Lions. At least the interesting parts. It's a preseason game. Not much really to take away because the main guys that you'll see going forward for the Giants only really played the first quarter. Some played a little longer than that. Some played a little shorter than that, specifically Malik Neighbors, who we weren't even necessarily sure was going to play last night. He unfortunately gets no action because Drew Lock can't get out of his own way and find him downfield when he was open multiple times. That's another topic that we're going to discuss. But I wanted to highlight 5 different things that I saw last night that I think are important going forward if you're a casual Giant fan, if you're a diehard Giant fan, either way. Because listen, at the end of the day, I'm not going to bore you to death with every single thing that I took away from last night's game, specifically from the third and fourth stringers. Like, realistically, who cares? Who cares about those guys who won't get any minutes for this Giants team? And if they do, then that's a major problem because the Giants have suffered multiple injuries. These guys are just fighting for roster spots. And also, at the same time, the Giants are not rolling anything out there that they're going to use in season. They're not trying to give teams an advantage to be able to look at that film and say, okay, well, the Giants run this scheme, they run this, they run that. It was mostly just to see these guys go out there and try to compete to the best of their abilities and try to get roster spots if they're at that point. So I wanted to start with this. I wanted to start with the general topic. I'm going to hit 5 things here today. First thing is the offensive line. And again, these are the backups. Austin Schlottman, Aaron Stinney, like these guys, hopefully, Josh Zudu, hopefully will not get big minutes for the Giants this year. One thing I noticed, and it's something that Carl Banks called out on the broadcast. He said that this Giants offensive line just looks connected. I don't know why. I have this good feeling. I get this good sentiment stemming from Carmen Bracillo, who the Giants poached from the Raiders, who's the offensive line coach. I just get these good vibes. I don't know how to explain it. I just feel like when you look at the Giants offensive line on paper, anchored by the left tackle of, you all know him, Andrew Thomas, who is a top 2 offensive tackle in football, and you made some major improvements on the inside. And you got Illuminor at right tackle, and I really think that Evan Neal possesses the intangibles to be successful at right guard. It remains to be seen. If he sucks he's worse than Eric Flowers, objectively. So we need to see what Evan Neal could bring at right guard or wherever he's going to play. It's certainly not going to be right tackle. That's for sure. Illuminor looks to have locked up that spot. So the Giants team right now, as it stands, even though it was the backups and they were playing the Lions backups, they looked competent. That's something that I saw all across my Twitter X timeline. They just looked connected. They looked competent. And yes, there were a few holding calls and false starts and whatnot, but it just seems like there's something different. I can't really explain it. I can't go that much into depth about it, but like something feels right about this. And again, it's the preseason. These are backups. They won't be playing. When we get to early September, the Giants open up on what? I think September 8th. We're going to see it all then. We have a full month. This is just stuff that we are discussing, not necessarily at length. We watched 4 quarters of preseason football last night. We're not going to be able to come on here and discuss where the Giants are going to be going forward just based off that. All right, so enough for the offensive line. We're going to focus on number 2 here, and that is the RB2 battle between Eric Gray and Tyrone Tracy, of course, taken from Purdue in the late rounds of this year's draft, a guy who has kind of been penciled in as the RB2, and that Eric Gray would potentially be cut to save some money. I think last night, that is, after last night, that definitely won't be the case with Eric Gray's showing 4 carries, 52 yards for 2 touchdowns, and then also 4 catches for 46 yards. He had a day. Again, take it all with a grain of salt. We're watching these guys go up against the worst of the worst in the NFL. Yes, they're all really good football players in hindsight, but are they as good as the number 1 team of every single team? No. It's like you're playing the Panthers every week. The Panthers backups, these are like the Lions' 3rd and 4th string guys. Tyrone Trace started the game. I mean, it was more of a committee throughout the game. But then, Gray got going. But also you could look at what Tyrone Tracy did. And Tyrone Tracy is a really solid running back. 5 carries for 26 yards. It's a 5.2 yards per carry. It's really solid. And you watch Tyrone Tracy, and you could see why the Giants are so high on him. You could see his ability to cut and not necessarily go down at first contact is certainly something the Giants are going to need this year. As good as Devin Singletary can be, when was the last time Devin Singletary excelled as the lead back? Not in a committee whatsoever. Not in a committee. That's not who Devin Singletary is. And I don't think going forward that is something that he can be for the Giants. So they need someone to emerge. And it's good if 2 of those guys look like they're good enough to play. And that is what we saw last night. And both these guys are certainly competent enough to get some carries in game during the regular season. Who emerges as the number 1 running or the number 2 running back behind, of course, Devin Singletary, I think will be ironed out over these next 2 preseason games and then in practice. And we'll see that week 1 against the Vikings. It's something that I'm certainly keeping my eye out for. Again, these are all like these are all on the back burner. These storylines, will they matter as much when it comes time for week 1 of the regular season? I really don't think so. But it's definitely interesting when you consider the fact that the Giants dedicated an asset, a late round draft pick, to draft Tyrone Tracy. They're really high on him. And then Eric Gray plays like this. With the 40-plus yard touchdown, electric touchdown that got MetLife Stadium on its feet for a preseason game, probably at half capacity, maybe even less. Who would even go to a preseason game? I get the vibes, you want to go, whatever, but August football, it really doesn't do it for me, especially when it feels like, whatever, I digress. I mean, it's like the NFL is pushing this on us. They should have joint practices only, and there shouldn't be preseason because no one plays. The rookies play. And speaking of a rookie who played, who had the highlight of the night, realistically, is Tyler Nubin, the Giants' 2nd-round draft pick out of Minnesota. He had one of the most electric hits that I have ever seen from a safety on a 6'5", 300-pound offensive lineman. And, I mean, that was all over the place. Like, that was being shared left to right. And, of course, because it was the one big play a Giants early draft pick made last night, and we'll talk about that other guy who played and should have made a few big plays, but the quarterback couldn't find it. But Tyler Nubin, man, like the Giants have been needing this physical safety. They've been lacking one since they got rid of Jabril Peppers. And Tyler Nubin, is he Xavier McKinney? I don't really think so. I think Xavier McKinney thrived in areas that Tyler Nubin probably won't. But if the Giants can get this out of him, someone who could stop the run, someone who could do a serviceable job in pass coverage, then this draft pick will be a total win. And apologies for this awful Wi-Fi. I really don't understand what's going on, but I'm seeing this. Sorry if I'm coming across a little laggy here, but we're going to keep going through this because why not? I mean, this is what we do, even when there's one person on the Wi-Fi, and that's it. But yeah, let's move on here. Let's get through this quickly because I don't know when this is going to cut out at any point. But another big takeaway that I had from last night, and someone who I barely really heard his name, is Deontay Johnson. Not talking about the wide receiver, Deontay Johnson. I'm talking about the linebacker, Deontay Johnson, who's competing with Micah McFadden for first-round reps, for first-team reps. He absolutely showed out last night. Absolutely showed out. He was the defensive player of the game, realistically. I mean, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, gets taken out pretty early on in the game, but really did a lot with the time that he had. I think it's a name to watch going forward in these preseason games, in practices. Will he actually get first-team reps over Micah McFadden? Who, again, I mean, like Mike McFadden, like he has had his moments where he showed out, but I don't see him as this really solid second middle linebacker behind Bobby Okereke. Maybe Deontay Johnson who's undrafted, I think out of Toledo. The Giants signed him as an undrafted free agent last year. If you look on ESPN, the Giants depth chart, he doesn't even show up. And look at him playing and showing out like he did. It's definitely an encouraging sign. There's no such thing as bad depth. If you have depth, it's great. So the fact that the Giants have these options at middle linebacker with McFadden versus Deontay Johnson is a great thing. And it's something to watch going forward. And I'm excited to see what Deontay Johnson continues to provide here in the preseason. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about today, and something that will eat up probably the most amount of time, is the quarterback two battle between Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock. Drew Lock, who looked atrocious last night. He really did. It's something that you don't necessarily, not that you don't necessarily expect it, but Drew Lock with the Seahawks actually played pretty well last year. When he subbed in for Geno Smith, who went down with injury. I think it was a Monday Night Football game. Might have been. I think it was against the Eagles. And if I'm wrong, correct me in the comment section below. I think it was against the Eagles, and I think Drew Lock came out and won the game essentially. And it was a Monday Night Football game, Sunday Night Football game. It was a primetime game. I don't exactly know when it was. Again, don't quote me on that, but it was something that when the Giants signed him as the backup quarterback, now what looks like it might be a waste of $5 million. It was exciting. There was the rumor, of course, that Drew Lock would compete with Daniel Jones for first-team reps. That didn't come to fruition, and now we see why, because we see who Drew Lock is. And as good as Daniel Jones could be, and as good as, again, Drew Lock looked, I don't think it was ever a competition between the two of them. This is the real competition here for quarterback two. Tommy DeVito comes in after Drew Lock suffers an injury. This is also after the fact that Drew Lock threw a pick and just was not looking downfield. He had Malik Neighbors on, I believe it was the first two drives. Neighbors was taken out midway through the first quarter. And he had Neighbors wide open. I mean, there's multiple screenshots. If you look it up on Twitter, you could see guys who put it out there. Neighbors was wide open multiple times. And Drew Lock, if I'm Drew Lock, and I'm really looking to solidify my role as the backup quarterback behind Daniel Jones, I'm throwing to Malik Neighbors every goddamn time. Every single time. Throw him the ball. He's going to make plays. He showed it multiple times in practice against the Giants players, against the Giants secondary, who sucks, I understand, but against the Lions secondary as well, who's also not great. But then you're playing against guys who aren't even starting on either team. Throw him the damn ball. Give the fans what they want to see. It wasn't even a guarantee that Malik Neighbors would play. I turned on the game and was pleasantly surprised to see him out there. And of course, we don't even see him get involved on anything, considering the fact that Drew Lock was not even looking downfield. I mean, it's not a good sign. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to go in depth on this either. I mean, you watch it objectively. Drew Lock was not good. He was not good. Tommy DeVito comes in, goes 8 for 15, 92 yards, 4 carries, 2 yards. He got sacked once. No one is saying that Tommy DeVito, on a good football team, a football team with Super Bowl aspirations, should be the backup quarterback. On this team, though, he should be the backup quarterback. With what we saw last year, the 3 straight wins, the reason why the Giants, of course, weren't able to get a top 3 quarterback in the draft, thanks, Tommy. But we just see a guy who goes out there and doesn't lose you a game. That is the problem with a lot of backup quarterbacks in the NFL. They won't necessarily win you a game, but by putting them in there, they will absolutely lose you a game. We didn't see that at all last year from Tommy DeVito, even at his worst. If anything, he won them the game against the Packers, a Packers team that keep in mind, absolutely blew out the Lions earlier on in the season. Tommy DeVito might end up as the backup quarterback on this team. Maybe the Giants, they look at how much they gave Drew Lock, $5 million as the backup quarterback, and they might force the issue like we see across sports. The first thing that comes to mind is the fact that the Tigers still tried out Javi Baez when he should have been DFA'd months ago. Obviously, you can't compare apples to oranges, but it's somewhat of a similar situation here with the Giants paying Drew Lock $5 million to be the backup quarterback. And then now he's getting outplayed by Tommy DeVito in the preseason. They just got to go with whoever's better, whoever's more competent. And let's just pray that Daniel Jones is able to stay healthy the entire year. Let's hope there isn't another flare-up with the neck injury. There's no further complications with his knee. There's no setbacks from his recovery, even though he seems to be back. And let's hope we don't have to worry about who is the backup quarterback. But again, on a team with aspirations to win 7 to 8 games, is it the end of the world if Tommy DeVito ends up being the backup quarterback? I really don't think so. I don't see that as that big of a deal. And what we saw last night is that Tommy DeVito might just be the better option at backup quarterback. And we are not jumping to any conclusions here. It was the first of 3 preseason games. As long as Drew Lock and according to Brian Dable, his injury shouldn't keep him out more than a week. But we should continue to see here a battle between Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock. And Drew Lock, again, he's going to get more reps. He's going to get more opportunity to go out there and definitely look like a competent NFL quarterback, something that he just did not look like last night. So this battle between DeVito and Drew Lock is certainly far from over, but not an encouraging sign last night. With the Giants giving $5 million to Drew Lock and money they probably could have allocated elsewhere if Tommy DeVito ends up being the backup quarterback over Drew Lock. All right, that's going to do it for today. I know, short video. Wi-Fi, of course, gets better at the end as I'm breezing. And there it is. I'm going to end it here. If you want to hear more Giant stuff, I don't usually do Giant stuff on my own channel because I host a podcast with Sean Morash called One Giant Step. If you haven't subscribed to it, wherever you get your podcast, if you don't download every episode, then there you go. There's my shameless plug, even though I do mention it almost every single thing I do here. But it's really good stuff between Sean and I. I got an episode out earlier on this week, kind of previewing what or not necessarily previewing, but also, talking about the joint practices, because that was really what was more important. Not who out of the Lions or Giants third and fourth stringers would be more competent on the football field last night. But I definitely got into that in a solo episode released earlier this week. Sean and I are going to release something on our own, recapping what we saw in this game against the Lions. So stay tuned for that. I tweet every one of those episodes out there, and definitely check it out. It's some good stuff. But more Knicks stuff, more Yankee stuff on the way. Should have a guest for you all next week. I know I've been kind of behind with that. I've reached out to multiple people, haven't heard anything back. It is what it is. No excuses there. Should have more good content for you going forward. Also, again, I want to talk Knicks. I want to continue the Knicks conversation. Training camp starting up in 3 weeks now, which is just absurd. The offseason goes by so fast, specifically NFL, but NBA too. It definitely does. All right, that'll do it. Bryce Gelman here. Thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment and subscribe. Speak to you all next week.